From the training folks and getting the vehicle prepared, from the people down at the Cape. During the mission, we had equally good support from all the ground units, and the crew that I took with me on 51G was superb. They
like to get up in the middle of the night and walk out with all kinds of photographers waiting for you and flashing lights to make you blind when you tried to stumble into the trailer, and then we were on our way. As an ignition lasts for about 6 seconds. You can feel the vibration in the vehicle. Fortunately, we couldn't see all the smoke and steam and fire coming out the back end. Gimbal the engines just before takeoff after they're lit, and when you lift off, you'll be able to see the shock waves in the main engines. T0, the hold-down bolts are blown, and the SRB is light, and we're on our way. I personally got a chance to see the tower glide by out my peripheral vision, and then the roll shortly after tower clear, and if you look closely there, you can see the diamond shock waves in the exhaust of the main engines. John Young said after he came back from Flight 1 and saw the movies of that Eddie Shearer, was glad he couldn't see all that flame and smoke, or he'd been a whole lot more concerned during liftoff. That's a bit of a rough ride during the first 2 minutes and 11 seconds of the flight, in which the solid rockets are burning.
This is a deployment of ArabSat, deployed for a consortium of Arab nations which comprise the Arab League. And again, you can see there's a level of intensity here associated with doing one of these deployments. We recognize the importance of these things and their value. And here's ArabSat going out. It's built by Aerospatiale, a French corporation, and it looks, of course, considerably different than the other satellite which we had for Hughes.
ArabSat is, as a matter of fact, operating very well now in geosynchronous orbit, and that's when I started breathing again, is when it came out of the shuttle. So it's doing very well, I have to report that.
Again, here, as in many shots, you'll see the limb of the Earth.
Steve and I are doing some work on the IG experiment, and I think we've gotten enough material on that experiment to get a PhD for the research, and a couple more for me and Steve. So
I think all the training and preparation for the Madagascar being one of those.
And that's me taking some more pictures also for one of my experiments. Made a deal with the geologists in Saudi Arabia. Any mineral findings, the crew gets half, but they said no, just a thank you note. Okay. As you see, not all retrievals on this flight were successful. So let John Fabian do this one.
In fact, we sat and we fighted very much to have our food, and even when we were both of us fighting very much, we were not all the time very successful.
Experimenting here with some more retrievals. Those are the two satellites.
Prepared. A lot of times we'd like to go up on the flight deck and eat. It's really nice to sit there and eat.
Obviously, my table wasn't ready, so I had to wait a little bit.
But the food was really good, and I think mealtime was one of the high points of the day.
That's what you get for letting a test pilot do medical experiments on you. So, I still don't think Patrick will make a good doctor. He'll never do that. So when I did my famous 1,500 miles all in one shot, you get tired running 1,500 miles. Took about 5 minutes.
Through the mid-deck.
Never complain about hotel accommodations after this one.
Sultan
takes the first data.
Still haven't figured out what I'm doing there, but it's one of my experiments, the phase separation experiment. And I have to report also, like Patrick did, all the data we came back with came out really great. They did make a photographer out of me, and I'm trying to forget everything I learned.
Re-entry is not quite as spectacular as launch, but when you are coming through the air at around Mach 20 to 22 and you start getting the rosy glow, it's really spectacular. John was also taking some pictures looking out the back, and maybe he can describe to you what he's seeing.
This is looking out the overhead window, and the tail of the vehicle is not in sight. What you're seeing here is simply the interaction of shock waves around the vehicle converging up over the top of the spacecraft and making that very intense picture.
As has been said before by previous commanders who have flown, it handles very well, and even in a crosswind you probably have to work a little more at it, but it still is a very precise flying machine, and all the training we get in the shuttle training aircraft certainly helps, because you can see the gear come down here when you do your first landing. It's got to be a good one for real the first time. It's good to have all that training behind you, and you feel confident that everything is going to work out just fine, as it did in this case. We touched down and pretty lightly bounced just a little bit, got the nose down, and we'd, by design, tried to do almost a max braking. They wanted 10 to 12 foot per second braking rate as we touched down. The lake bed was a little bit soft, and you can see when we start getting on the binders, there's a pretty good cloud of dust being kicked up behind it. We, I guess, have the record now for the shortest stop from wheels down to stop was 7,400 feet, and the braking profile was right on what they expected. It varied between 10 and 12 foot per second almost all the way to touchdown. I mean, all the way to stop. Once we got stopped, we have to go through a few post-flight checklist items and shut down the APUs and the like, reconfigure the GPCs, and then it's time to get out and take a shower. Here we're coming down the steps. I almost pulled a Gerald Ford. We meet our boss, George Abbey, and everybody came through the flight in really great shape. As you can see, everybody's down, bouncing around, and sad the flight's over, but also happy to be back, and we were very pleased with the whole mission.